In the early 1940s, as the Second World War raged across multiple theaters, the Royal Navy confronted a formidable and evolving challenge beneath the waves. Traditional submarine operations, while effective in earlier conflicts, increasingly proved insufficient against the sophisticated and persistent anti-submarine measures deployed by Axis powers. The Battle of the Atlantic, a critical campaign to maintain Britain's supply lines, underscored this vulnerability. British submarines, operating largely in isolation and dependent on opportunistic encounters, struggled to counter the coordinated and aggressive tactics employed by German U-boats. The situation demanded a strategic innovation, one that would redefine underwater engagement and restore the Royal Navy's dominance beneath the ocean surface. This necessity spurred the genesis of a British submarine tactic that would soon become pivotal. Conceived within the Admiralty's strategic planning rooms, the tactic emerged as a response to both operational failures and emerging intelligence assessments. It was a marked departure from previous doctrine, emphasizing not individual prowess but synchronized, coordinated action. The concept borrowed elements from the German Wolfpack approach, wherein groups of submarines operated in concert to overwhelm convoys and maximize destructive potential. However, British naval architects sought to refine and adapt this method, integrating stealth and interdiction to suit the unique demands of their naval engagements. The innovation was not merely tactical but operational, involving a comprehensive restructuring of submarine deployment. Rather than scattered patrols, submarines were to operate in coordinated groups, moving through choke points known to be critical in enemy supply routes. This shift required meticulous planning and enhanced communication protocols, a challenge given the technological constraints of the era. The emphasis on stealth was paramount. British commanders recognized that detection by enemy escorts or aircraft could spell disaster for their vessels. Thus, the new tactic prioritized silent approaches, patience, and the exploitation of intelligence to intercept targets with precision. The development of this tactic coincided with significant advancements in naval intelligence capabilities. The Admiralty's collaboration with code-breaking units at Bletchley Park played a critical role in shaping operational decisions. By decrypting Enigma communications, British planners gained unprecedented insight into Axis convoy movements and defensive dispositions. This intelligence, when fused with the tactical framework of coordinated Wolfpack-style assaults, allowed submarines to be positioned with strategic foresight rather than relying on chance encounters. The synergy of intelligence and tactical innovation marked a turning point in undersea warfare for the Royal Navy. Implementation began with a series of carefully orchestrated patrols, initially in the North Atlantic, where the stakes were highest. Commanders like Captain Edward "Teddy" Wilkins were among the first to execute these new orders, leading groups of submarines through narrow maritime corridors. The goal was clear: to disrupt the flow of Axis supplies by targeting convoys with swift, decisive strikes. These Wolfpacks moved under the cover of darkness and adverse weather, leveraging the stealth approach to evade detection and maximize the element of surprise. The tactic demanded not only technical proficiency but also rigorous discipline and coordination among crews who were accustomed to operating independently. Early missions demonstrated the promise of this strategic innovation. While losses were inevitable in the harsh theater of war, the coordinated submarine tactic began to yield tangible results. Axis convoys found themselves under constant threat, forced to divert routes, allocate more escorts, and expend resources in defensive maneuvers. For the Royal Navy, the development marked a pivotal turning point, shifting the momentum in the underwater engagement. The tactic's success was measured not solely in tonnage sunk but in the strategic pressure it imposed on enemy logistics, a pressure that rippled across multiple fronts and contributed to the broader Allied war effort. The evolution of this tactic was neither swift nor without setbacks. Technical limitations in communication equipment and the inherent risks of group maneuvers in contested waters complicated early operational deployments. Submarine captains had to adapt quickly to new command structures and protocols. Training programs were overhauled to emphasize coordinated action and intelligence interpretation, fostering a new breed of submariners skilled in both independent judgment and collaborative tactics. The Admiralty's commitment to refining this approach reflected an understanding that the future of naval warfare hinged on innovation beneath the waves. Moreover, the tactic's emphasis on stealth required technological enhancements. Submarines were retrofitted with quieter propulsion systems to reduce acoustic signatures, and sonar operators were trained to exploit the latest improvements in ASTIC detection. Torpedo technology also advanced to complement the tactical demands, with faster, more reliable weapons designed to capitalize on the close-range opportunities created by coordinated Wolfpack attacks. These technical advancements were not isolated, each was integrated thoughtfully into the broader tactical framework, reinforcing the Royal Navy's strategic position. The shift in British submarine doctrine did not go unnoticed by Axis commanders. German naval intelligence recognized the emerging threat posed by these coordinated attacks and responded by increasing convoy defenses and deploying counter-submarine tactics. In particular, air patrols intensified, and escort vessels adapted to new patterns of submarine engagement. This cat-and-mouse dynamic underscored the high stakes of underwater warfare and the continuous evolution of tactics on both sides. For the Royal Navy, however, the coordinated submarine tactic represented a strategic innovation that could tip the scales in a conflict where control of the seas was existential. The origins of this British submarine tactic are inseparable from the broader narrative of World War II naval operations. It was a response born out of urgency, necessity, and the relentless pursuit of strategic advantage. The initial conception within the Admiralty was a calculated gamble, embracing risk to counterbalance the growing prowess of Axis undersea forces. The story of its emergence is one of adaptation, a hallmark of effective military strategy, where lessons from past failures and enemy successes informed a bold new approach. In this, the Royal Navy demonstrated not only resilience but an ability to innovate under pressure, setting the stage for subsequent chapters in the evolution of submarine warfare. At its core, the tactic redefined the role of the submarine from a lone predator to a coordinated participant in a wider naval strategy. The traditional image of the solitary hunter stalking enemy vessels gave way to a more complex operational picture, where multiple submarines acted as a cohesive unit. This shift demanded a fundamental change in mindset among commanders and crews alike. Communication, timing, and shared situational awareness became as critical as individual skill and courage. The success of the tactic depended on seamless integration of these elements, a challenge met through rigorous training and disciplined execution. This strategic innovation also influenced the Royal Navy's broader operational planning. Submarine wolf packs were integrated into combined arms operations, coordinating with surface fleets and air patrols to create layered defenses and offensive opportunities. The tactic's flexibility allowed it to be adapted to varying theaters of operation, from the open expanses of the Atlantic to the confined and treacherous waters of the Mediterranean. Such adaptability was crucial in maintaining pressure on Axis supply chains, which were vital to sustaining war efforts across multiple fronts. In retrospect, the genesis of the British submarine tactic in the early 1940s stands as a testament to the dynamic nature of naval warfare. It encapsulates a moment when strategic innovation, technical advancement, and intelligence exploitation converged to produce a new paradigm of underwater engagement. The Royal Navy's willingness to depart from established doctrine and embrace coordinated, intelligence-driven operations reshaped the maritime battlefield. What began as a response to mounting threats evolved into a defining element of Britain's naval strategy, demonstrating how innovation under duress can alter the course of conflict. Prior to the advent of the coordinated British submarine tactic in the early 1940s, the Royal Navy's approach to undersea warfare was largely characterized by solitary patrols and opportunistic strikes. This traditional method, while effective in certain scenarios, reflected an earlier era's understanding of submarine operations, one that emphasized individual initiative and stealth over group coordination. British submarines were dispatched on independent missions, tasked primarily with reconnaissance and the interception of enemy shipping when chance presented itself. The strategy relied heavily on the skill of individual commanders to identify and exploit fleeting opportunities, often in vast and unpredictable maritime environments. This solitary modus operandi was informed by the Royal Navy's long-standing naval doctrine, which viewed submarines as auxiliary tools complementing the dominant surface fleet. The emphasis was on disruption rather than sustained interdiction. Submarines prowled known shipping lanes, laying ambushes or shadowing convoys to relay intelligence back to surface units. Engagements were typically isolated encounters. The absence of coordinated tactics meant that each submarine operated without the benefit of direct support from others. As a result, while individual successes were notable, the overall strategic impact was limited by the inability to mass force or maintain persistent pressure on enemy logistics. Contrasting sharply with this approach were the German U-boat tactics that emerged prominently at the outset of World War II, most notably the Wolfpack strategy. German naval commanders had recognized the limitations of solitary submarine action and devised a method wherein groups of U-boats would converge upon convoys simultaneously. This tactic exploited the sheer volume and coordination of attacks to overwhelm convoy escorts and maximize shipping losses. It was a formidable innovation that granted Axis forces a significant advantage in the Battle of the Atlantic during the war's early years, inflicting severe damage on Allied supply lines. The Wolfpack approach relied on centralized command and communication networks that could direct multiple submarines to intercept identified convoys. German submarines, using encrypted radio transmissions, coordinated their movements to strike in concert, complicating escort defenses and fragmenting protective formations. This method not only increased the lethality of individual attacks but also created a psychological toll on Allied sailors, who faced relentless, multi-directional threats beneath the waves. The effectiveness of this tactic exposed critical weaknesses in British naval strategy and underscored the urgent need for innovation. For the Royal Navy, the disparity between their solitary patrols and the German Wolfpacks was stark and increasingly untenable. The initial years of the war saw mounting losses and disrupted supply chains, undermining British operational capabilities. Commanders and strategists alike recognized that maintaining the traditional doctrine would not suffice against an adversary that had embraced coordinated, large-scale submarine warfare. The tactical imbalance necessitated a re-evaluation of submarine roles and a shift towards more integrated, collaborative operations underpinned by superior intelligence and communication. This recognition was compounded by technological and operational constraints. British submarines, often older and less technologically advanced than their German counterparts, faced challenges in detection, communication, and endurance. The solitary patrol model, while simpler to execute, left vessels vulnerable and limited their strategic reach. The inability to mass effect or to sustain continuous pressure on enemy shipping routes diminished the Royal Navy's influence below the surface. The strategic imperative emerged clearly, to develop a tactic that could rival or surpass the Wolfpack's efficacy through innovation rather than mere replication. However, the Royal Navy's approach to this challenge was nuanced. Rather than simply copying the German Wolfpack model, British naval strategists sought to incorporate its strengths while mitigating its weaknesses. They aimed to create a tactic that balanced coordination with stealth, leveraging Britain's intelligence capabilities and adapting to the unique operational theaters where their submarines operated. This required a fundamental shift in doctrine, training, and command structures, moving away from independent actions to a more collective, intelligence-driven paradigm. The historical context of submarine warfare prior to this innovation is essential to understanding the significance of this shift. During the interwar period, British submarine development was constrained by treaty limitations and budgetary restrictions, leading to a focus on defensive rather than offensive capabilities. Furthermore, the Royal Navy's strategic priorities emphasized surface fleet engagements and control of sea lanes, relegating submarines to secondary roles. This doctrinal stance influenced early war tactics, where submarines were deployed in a manner consistent with traditional naval thinking rather than as autonomous offensive platforms. In contrast, the German Kriegsmarine invested heavily in submarine technology and tactics, viewing U-boats as a primary means to challenge British maritime superiority. The Wolfpack tactic exemplified this philosophy, transforming submarines into a coordinated, offensive weapon system designed to disrupt and degrade the enemy's logistical lifelines. The initial success of this approach exposed the limitations of the Royal Navy's submarine doctrine and compelled a reassessment of undersea warfare strategy. The British response was gradual but decisive. Naval planners began to analyze the operational data from early engagements, identifying patterns in German attacks and weaknesses in their own deployment schemes. This analytical process highlighted the need for enhanced coordination among submarines, improved communication systems, and the integration of intelligence into tactical planning. The shift from solitary patrols to coordinated group operations represented a paradigm change, demanding a re-evaluation of command hierarchies and operational protocols. Training regimes were adapted to inculcate the skills necessary for group maneuvers and joint operations. Submarine crews were drilled in formation sailing, synchronized attacks, and secure communication methods. Commanders learned to operate within a network structure, receiving and relaying orders that directed their movements in concert with other vessels. This evolution was not merely technical but cultural, requiring a transformation in the mindset of submariners accustomed to operating independently. Technological advancements accompanied these doctrinal changes. The Royal Navy invested in more reliable radio communication equipment capable of supporting coordinated operations without compromising stealth. Sonar, ASTIC, technology was refined to enhance detection capabilities, and torpedo designs were improved to increase hit probability during coordinated strikes. These innovations collectively enabled the practical implementation of a tactic that demanded precise timing and mutual support among submarines. Despite these efforts, challenges persisted. Coordinating multiple submarines in the vastness of the ocean, often under radio silence or limited communication to avoid detection, required exceptional discipline and planning. The risk of friendly fire or interception by enemy forces complicated operations. However, the potential benefits in disrupting enemy logistics and regaining the initiative drove continued refinement and expansion of the tactic. The divergence between British and German submarine tactics in the early years of the war thus framed the strategic landscape of undersea warfare. The British adherence to solitary patrols contrasted with the German mastery of wolfpack coordination. This contrast not only influenced the immediate outcomes of naval engagements but also shaped the trajectory of tactical innovation. The Royal Navy's eventual embrace of coordinated, intelligence-driven group tactics represented a decisive evolution, one that sought to reclaim control of the Atlantic and restore balance to the underwater battlefield. This historical background underscores the critical juncture faced by the Royal Navy. The limitations of existing submarine strategies, when confronted with the sophisticated and aggressive German wolfpack tactics, made clear that change was imperative. The subsequent development of a British submarine tactic that combined coordination, stealth, and intelligence marked a strategic turning point. It was a response informed by experience, necessity, and an acute understanding of the evolving character of naval warfare, a testament to the Royal Navy's capacity for adaptation and innovation amid adversity. The British response to the tactical dominance of German U-boat wolfpacks culminated in the development of what came to be known within the Admiralty as Operation Gardening. This approach represented a sophisticated evolution of submarine warfare, integrating coordinated group maneuvers with strategic mine-laying and ambush tactics designed to disrupt Axis supply routes decisively. Operation Gardening was not merely a replication of enemy methods but an innovative framework that leveraged the Royal Navy's strengths in intelligence, communication, and stealth to execute underwater interdiction with unprecedented precision. At its core, Operation Gardening entailed the deployment of British submarines in coordinated groups, operating in concert to cover strategic maritime choke points. These choke points, narrow straits, key passages, and known convoy routes, were carefully selected based on intelligence reports and reconnaissance data. The tactic's effectiveness hinged on the ability of submarines to cover these critical areas simultaneously, creating a virtual net that constrained enemy shipping movement and increased the probability of successful engagements. This represented a marked shift from previous strategies that favored dispersed patrols and opportunistic attacks. Central to the operation was the innovative use of mine-laying as an offensive tool. British submarines were equipped to deploy naval mines covertly along anticipated convoy paths and anchorage areas. These mines served to augment the direct attacks by submarines, forcing enemy vessels to alter courses, slow down, or risk catastrophic damage. The clandestine nature of underwater mine deployment capitalized on the element of surprise and compounded the logistical challenges faced by Axis navies. Mines could deny access to key ports or supply lines without the need for continuous submarine presence, amplifying the strategic reach of the British undersea fleet. Execution of Operation Gardening demanded seamless coordination among submarines, a task complicated by the limitations of wartime communication technology. The Royal Navy addressed this challenge by developing improved radio protocols that balanced the need for secure, low-detection transmissions with the imperative for timely information exchange. Submarine commanders received encrypted orders based on the latest intelligence, enabling them to synchronize movements and attacks with precision. This coordination was vital, as simultaneous strikes increased the tactical pressure on convoys and overwhelmed escort defenses. Intelligence played a crucial role in the planning and implementation of Operation Gardening. The Royal Navy's collaboration with Bletchley Park's codebreakers allowed for near real-time insights into Axis convoy schedules, routes, and protective measures. This information fed directly into the operational planning cycle, guiding submarine deployments to maximize interception opportunities. The ability to predict enemy movements reduced the reliance on chance encounters and transformed submarine warfare into a calculated campaign of attrition against Axis logistics. The stealth approach was fundamental in preserving the effectiveness of these coordinated attacks. British submarines operated primarily under the cover of darkness and adverse weather conditions, exploiting natural concealment to evade enemy detection. Silent running protocols, strict radio discipline, and tactical maneuvering minimized acoustic and electromagnetic signatures. This stealth not only increased survivability but also enhanced the element of surprise, allowing submarines to position themselves advantageously for ambushes or mine-laying operations. Operation Gardening also introduced tactical innovations in engagement methodology. Submarine groups would often initiate attacks with mine deployment to disrupt convoy formations, followed by coordinated torpedo strikes targeting high-value vessels such as tankers and troop transports. This multi-layered offensive increased the likelihood of significant damage, as the confusion and delays caused by mines weakened convoy cohesion and defensive readiness. Additionally, the tactic emphasized rapid withdrawal and repositioning post-attack to avoid counter-detection and retaliation. The operational complexity of these missions required a high degree of discipline and professionalism among submarine crews. Training programs were intensified to prepare officers and sailors for the demands of coordinated group tactics, mine-laying precision, and rapid response to dynamic combat scenarios. Leadership within submarines evolved to prioritize communication and cooperation, fostering a culture where individual initiative was balanced with adherence to collective strategic objectives. This cultural shift was instrumental in the successful execution of Operation Gardening. Notably, the implementation of this tactic brought about significant improvements in the Royal Navy's command and control structures concerning submarine operations. A dedicated submarine coordination center was established within the Admiralty, tasked with synthesizing intelligence, managing communication networks, and directing submarine wolfpack deployments. This centralized command enabled rapid decision-making and adaptive responses to changing operational conditions, enhancing the overall efficacy of the tactic. The effectiveness of Operation Gardening was soon demonstrated in several key theaters. In the Mediterranean, British submarines employing the tactic successfully disrupted Axis supply convoys attempting to reinforce North African campaigns. The strategic placement of mines combined with coordinated torpedo attacks inflicted substantial losses, compelling Axis commanders to allocate additional resources to convoy protection and route planning. Similarly, in the North Atlantic, these coordinated operations applied persistent pressure on German U-boat supply lines, contributing to the gradual erosion of Axis maritime capabilities. Technological enhancements supported the tactical framework of Operation Gardening. Submarines were outfitted with improved mine deployment mechanisms that allowed for rapid and precise placement. Communication equipment was upgraded to facilitate encrypted transmissions over greater distances with reduced risk of interception. Torpedo technology advanced concurrently, with the introduction of more reliable and faster models that complemented the timing and coordination required for group attacks. These technical innovations were integral to translating strategic concepts into operational successes. The operation's success also influenced the broader strategic calculus of the naval war. By forcing Axis navies to contend with multidimensional threats, submarine attacks coupled with minefields, Operation Gardening compelled a reallocation of enemy naval assets. Escort vessels were stretched thinner, air patrols intensified, and supply routes became less predictable. This diffusion of enemy focus alleviated pressure on other Allied naval operations and contributed to the overall attrition of Axis maritime power. While initially conceived as a wartime expedient, the principles underpinning Operation Gardening resonated beyond immediate tactical gains. The emphasis on coordinated group action, intelligence-driven deployment, and the integration of diverse offensive tools represented a strategic innovation that would inform future submarine doctrines. The success of this approach demonstrated the potency of combining stealth with synchronized offensive operations, reshaping the Royal Navy's conceptualization of submarine warfare. In practice, Operation Gardening required delicate balance. The coordination of multiple submarines in contested waters entailed significant risks, including potential detection during communication exchanges and the hazards inherent in mine-laying near enemy shipping lanes. Commanders had to weigh the benefits of aggressive interdiction against the preservation of their limited undersea assets. This operational tension underscored the sophistication of the tactic, demanding judicious execution and continual adaptation to evolving enemy countermeasures. Ultimately, Operation Gardening exemplified the Royal Navy's capacity for strategic innovation under the pressures of total war. It synthesized lessons from earlier submarine engagements, incorporated technological advancements, and exploited intelligence breakthroughs to create a coordinated, stealth-driven offensive that transformed underwater warfare. This tactical evolution not only challenged Axis maritime operations but also set a new standard for submarine employment, emphasizing collective action over isolated heroics and precision over brute force. The success of the British submarine tactic during World War II was inseparable from the crucial role played by intelligence, particularly the groundbreaking work conducted at Bletchley Park. The Royal Navy's ability to decrypt Enigma-encrypted communications transformed the operational landscape of undersea warfare, providing commanders with unprecedented access to enemy convoy schedules, routes, and defense dispositions. This intelligence advantage underpinned the strategic adaptation that allowed British submarines to deploy with precision, maximizing the effectiveness of coordinated Wolfpack operations and fundamentally altering the balance of power beneath the waves. Bletchley Park's codebreakers operated in an atmosphere of intense secrecy and pressure, tirelessly unraveling the complex ciphers that shielded German naval communications. Their success in penetrating the Enigma codes did not merely yield raw information, it offered actionable intelligence that was meticulously analyzed and disseminated to operational commanders. The Admiralty established dedicated intelligence channels to ensure that decrypted data reached submarine commanders in a timely manner, enabling the synchronization of tactical deployments with the latest enemy movements. This integration of signals intelligence and naval operations exemplified a sophisticated fusion of technology and strategy. The impact of this intelligence on submarine operations was profound. Prior to the availability of decrypted communications, British submarines relied heavily on patrol patterns informed by limited reconnaissance and historical shipping lanes. The element of uncertainty constrained their ability to intercept convoys and often resulted in missed opportunities or exposure to counterattacks. With Enigma decrypts, however, commanders gained near real-time insight into the composition, timing, and routing of Axis convoys, allowing for precise positioning of submarines ahead of enemy movements. This intelligence-driven deployment transformed the nature of underwater engagement from reactive to proactive. The strategic adaptation fostered by this intelligence nexus demanded new operational protocols. Submarine commanders were briefed with detailed convoy information prior to deployment, enabling them to anticipate escort formations, identify high-value targets, and plan coordinated attacks. The communication networks within submarine wolfpacks were calibrated to facilitate rapid exchange of situational updates while maintaining radio discipline to avoid detection. This balance between information sharing and operational security was a constant challenge, as the risk of enemy interception and triangulation necessitated stringent radio silence outside critical moments. Moreover, the intelligence provided by Bletchley Park extended beyond convoy movements to include insights into enemy anti-submarine tactics and technological developments. Decrypts revealed changes in escort deployment, sonar usage, and air patrol patterns, allowing the Royal Navy to refine their submarine tactics accordingly. This feedback loop between intelligence and tactical adaptation was a critical factor in maintaining the strategic initiative. British submarines could anticipate and counter evolving Axis defensive measures, ensuring that the Wolfpack tactic remained effective despite enemy attempts at countering it. The orchestration of these intelligence-driven operations required a sophisticated command and control infrastructure. At the Admiralty, intelligence officers worked closely with operational planners to translate decrypted information into actionable orders. This collaboration extended to the submarine coordination centers, where real-time adjustments to deployments were made based on fresh intelligence inputs. The dynamic nature of convoy movements and the fluidity of naval engagements necessitated flexibility and rapid decision-making, supported by an integrated intelligence apparatus that was unparalleled for its time. One of the defining characteristics of this intelligence contribution was its role in amplifying the stealth approach central to British submarine tactics. Accurate knowledge of convoy routes allowed submarines to avoid unnecessary exposure and minimize the duration of contact with enemy escorts. Submarines could maneuver into optimal attack positions under cover of darkness or adverse weather, exploiting intelligence to enhance their concealment. This synergy between intelligence and stealth reduced the risk of counterdetection and increased the likelihood of successful interdiction. The importance of this intelligence-driven adaptation was underscored during key operations in the Atlantic and Mediterranean theaters. For instance, in the Mediterranean, decrypted communications guided British submarines to intercept and disrupt Axis supply convoys supporting campaigns in North Africa. Precise intelligence allowed wolfpacks to concentrate forces at choke points, laying mines and executing coordinated torpedo attacks that crippled enemy logistics. Similarly, in the North Atlantic, intelligence facilitated the identification and targeting of vital fuel and munitions shipments, undermining German operational capacity. The integration of intelligence into submarine tactics also influenced crew training and operational mindset. Submariners were educated on the significance of intelligence security, radio discipline, and the interpretation of tactical briefings derived from decrypted data. Commanders learned to operate within a framework that valued not only tactical skill but also the assimilation and application of intelligence information. This cultural shift within the submarine service enhanced coordination, situational awareness, and the overall effectiveness of missions. Despite the clear advantages, the reliance on decrypted intelligence presented challenges. The need to protect the secrecy of code-breaking efforts imposed operational constraints, including restrictions on the use of certain intelligence in ways that might alert the enemy to the breach. For example, commanders had to balance the benefits of acting on precise convoy information against the risk of revealing knowledge of Axis communications. This delicate operational calculus required careful planning and sometimes limited the scope of immediate tactical exploitation. Furthermore, the dynamic nature of naval warfare demanded continuous updates and verification of intelligence. Enemy forces adapted to changing circumstances, altering convoy routes and timing to evade interception. The codebreakers and intelligence analysts at Bletchley Park worked relentlessly to maintain the flow of accurate information, enabling the Royal Navy to stay ahead in this ongoing contest of wits and technology. This intelligence effort was not static but a sustained campaign that evolved alongside tactical developments. The contribution of intelligence to the British submarine tactic exemplified a broader strategic innovation that extended beyond weaponry and maneuver. It demonstrated the critical role of information superiority in modern warfare, particularly in the undersea domain where visibility and communication are inherently limited. The fusion of code-breaking, signals intelligence, and tactical adaptation transformed submarines from isolated hunters into components of a coordinated, intelligence-driven offensive system. This intelligence-driven strategic adaptation reshaped not only individual engagements but the entire character of underwater warfare. The Royal Navy submarine wolfpacks operated with a level of precision and coordination that was unprecedented, challenging Axis naval dominance and contributing significantly to the eventual Allied victory at sea. The synergy between Bletchley Park's codebreakers and Royal Navy commanders underscored the transformative power of intelligence in shaping military tactics and outcomes. In this context, the development of the British submarine tactic was as much a triumph of information warfare as it was of tactical innovation. It illustrated how the integration of intelligence into operational planning could multiply the effectiveness of military assets and redefine strategic possibilities. The lessons learned from this period laid the groundwork for modern doctrines that emphasize intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance as integral components of undersea combat strategy. The implementation of the British submarine tactic during World War II was profoundly influenced by concurrent technological innovations, which together elevated the operational effectiveness of the Royal Navy's undersea forces. These advancements, spanning sonar improvements, propulsion systems, and torpedo design, were instrumental in enabling the stealth approach and coordinated attacks characteristic of the new doctrine. The synergy between technology and tactic reshaped underwater engagement, compelling Axis navies to reconsider their convoy protection strategies and countermeasures. Foremost among these technological innovations was the refinement of sonar technology, known within the Royal Navy as ASTIC. Early sonar systems, though revolutionary in their capacity to detect submerged vessels, were limited in range and resolution, often producing ambiguous contact data. The advancement of ASTIC during the war led to enhanced detection capabilities, allowing submarines to better identify enemy escort vessels and navigate complex underwater environments with increased confidence. This improvement was vital for both offensive and defensive maneuvers, enabling submarines to approach convoys stealthily while evading their pursuers. The enhanced sonar systems also facilitated more effective coordination among submarines engaged in wolfpack formations. By improving situational awareness, commanders could better position their vessels relative to one another and to the enemy convoy, optimizing attack timing and minimizing the risk of collisions or friendly fire. This technological edge was crucial in executing the multi-submarine tactics of Operation Gardening, where precise timing and positioning were essential to overwhelming enemy defenses. Complementing sonar advances were developments in submarine propulsion. Early war diesel-electric submarines, while effective, generated significant acoustic signatures that increased the risk of detection by enemy sonar and hydrophones. The Royal Navy invested in quieter propulsion technologies and improved hull designs to reduce noise emissions. These modifications allowed British submarines to approach targets more closely and maintain stealth during extended patrols. Reduced acoustic signatures not only enhanced survivability but also improved the effectiveness of torpedo attacks, as submarines could remain undetected until striking distance. The quieting of propulsion systems also enabled submarines to operate more effectively in the increasingly contested and well-patrolled waters of the Atlantic and Mediterranean. With enemy anti-submarine warfare, ASW, tactics becoming more sophisticated, minimizing detectability became a tactical imperative. The British technological response ensured that their submarines retained the advantage of surprise, a critical element in the success of coordinated wolfpack attacks. Torpedo technology similarly underwent significant enhancements that aligned with the demands of the coordinated submarine tactic. Early torpedoes were plagued by issues including erratic running paths, premature detonations, or failure to detonate upon impact. The development and deployment of more reliable and faster torpedoes increased the lethality of submarine strikes. The Royal Navy introduced improved contact and magnetic exploders, along with refined guidance mechanisms, which collectively raised the probability of successful hits during engagements. The tactical implications of these torpedo improvements were substantial. Coordinated wolfpack attacks depended on timely and effective strikes from multiple submarines to overwhelm convoy defenses. Enhanced torpedo reliability reduced the risk of failed attacks that could expose submarines to countermeasures. Moreover, faster torpedoes shortened engagement windows, allowing submarines to execute attacks with greater precision and retreat swiftly to evade retaliation. These technological advances were integrated into the broader submarine strategy through rigorous training and operational doctrine. Submarine crews were instructed not only in the mechanics of new equipment but also in exploiting their capabilities within coordinated attack frameworks. Sonar operators refined detection techniques, propulsion engineers optimized silent running procedures, and weapons officers mastered the deployment of advanced torpedoes. This comprehensive integration ensured that technological gains translated into tactical advantages rather than remaining isolated improvements. The interplay between technological innovation and tactical adaptation was evident in the responses of Axis navies. German and Italian forces recognized the enhanced threat posed by British submarines equipped with improved sonar, quieter propulsion, and superior torpedoes. In reaction, they intensified escort measures, deployed more sophisticated sonar and radar systems, and increased air patrols to counteract the stealth approach. This technological arms race underscored the dynamic nature of undersea warfare, where each advancement prompted a corresponding countermeasure. Axis convoy escorts adapted their formations and employed new tactics to mitigate the risk of coordinated wolfpack attacks. For example, the use of hunter-killer groups, surface vessels specifically tasked with seeking and destroying submarines, became more prevalent. These groups relied on improved sonar and depth charge technology to detect and neutralize undersea threats. The Royal Navy's technological innovations, however, maintained a qualitative edge in many respects, enabling British submarines to continue pressing their advantage. The technological evolution also influenced the development of anti-submarine weapons and countermeasures, such as acoustic decoys and improved depth charges. These innovations complicated British submarine operations but also spurred further refinement of stealth technologies and tactics. The adaptation cycle exemplified the interplay between offense and defense, technology and strategy, that defined the submarine warfare environment during the conflict. Within the Royal Navy, the integration of technology and tactic fostered a culture of innovation and continuous improvement. Feedback from frontline commanders informed ongoing research and development efforts, ensuring that emerging technologies addressed operational needs. This iterative process was vital in maintaining the effectiveness of the coordinated submarine tactic amid evolving enemy defenses. Furthermore, technological improvements extended beyond hardware to include communication systems critical for coordinated operations. Secure, low-detection radio transmissions enabled submarines to exchange tactical information without compromising their stealth. Advances in encryption and transmission protocols ensured that wolfpack coordination could be maintained even in hostile electromagnetic environments, further enhancing operational cohesion. The cumulative effect of these technologies was a transformation in the nature of underwater engagement. British submarines were no longer constrained by the limitations that had previously hindered solitary patrols. They could now operate as a cohesive, stealthy force, capable of striking with precision and withdrawing before enemy countermeasures could be effectively deployed. This technological foundation was essential in realizing the full potential of the strategic innovation embodied by the coordinated submarine tactic. For the Axis powers, the increasing sophistication of British submarine capabilities necessitated a rethink of convoy protections. The traditional reliance on escort vessels and air patrols was supplemented by technological enhancements and tactical innovations aimed at detecting and neutralizing the enhanced British threat. The escalating contest of countermeasures and responses shaped much of the naval warfare in the Atlantic and Mediterranean theaters. In sum, the impact of technological innovation on the British submarine tactic was both profound and multifaceted. Improved sonar systems enhanced detection and coordination, quieter propulsion increased stealth and survivability, and advanced torpedoes amplified offensive power. These advancements were integrated seamlessly into the tactical framework of coordinated Wolfpack operations, enabling the Royal Navy to challenge Axis naval dominance effectively. The interplay of technology and strategy during this period exemplifies the dynamic evolution of naval warfare and the critical importance of innovation in shaping combat outcomes. Among the many pivotal moments that illustrated the effectiveness of the British submarine tactic, several notable engagements stand out for their strategic impact and operational success. These actions demonstrated the potency of coordinated Wolfpack operations in disrupting Axis supply lines and altering the maritime balance during critical phases of World War II. The tactical innovation, combining stealth, intelligence, and synchronized strikes, produced tangible results that reverberated across multiple theaters, underscoring the Royal Navy's regained dominance beneath the waves. One of the earliest significant demonstrations of this tactic occurred in the North Atlantic, a theater marked by perilous weather and heavily defended convoy routes. British submarines, operating in groups informed by decrypted intelligence from Bletchley Park, orchestrated ambushes along known Axis supply corridors. The interdiction of convoys carrying vital fuel and munitions to German forces placed immense pressure on the enemy's operational capacity. In one such engagement, a Wolfpack of British submarines successfully intercepted a large convoy, sinking multiple supply vessels within hours. The coordinated nature of the assault overwhelmed the convoy escorts, whose dispersed defenses struggled to repel simultaneous attacks from multiple directions. These successes were not isolated incidents but part of a sustained campaign that gradually eroded Axis maritime logistics. The Royal Navy's ability to maintain pressure through persistent Wolfpack patrols forced the enemy to divert resources to convoy defense and route adjustment. The cumulative tonnage of sunk ships during these operations significantly impaired the Axis war effort, demonstrating how tactical innovation translated directly into strategic advantage. The Mediterranean theater provided another critical proving ground for the British submarine tactic. Here, the narrow waterways and strategic choke points amplified the effectiveness of coordinated submarine operations. British Wolfpacks exploited the confined maritime geography to lay mines covertly and execute ambushes that disrupted Axis supply lines to North Africa. The interdiction of convoys supporting Rommel's Africa Corps was instrumental in constraining enemy reinforcements and supplies, contributing to the eventual Allied victories in the region. One particularly notable operation involved a coordinated attack on a heavily escorted Axis convoy attempting to reinforce forces in Libya. British submarines, guided by decrypted intelligence and employing stealth tactics honed through rigorous training, penetrated the convoy's defenses. The simultaneous torpedo strikes and mine deployments sowed chaos among the escorts and inflicted substantial losses on the convoy's high-value targets. The success of this engagement not only demonstrated the operational viability of the tactic but also imposed psychological strain on Axis naval commanders, who faced increasingly unpredictable undersea threats. These operational achievements were facilitated by meticulous planning and integration of intelligence into tactical execution. Submarine commanders received detailed briefings on convoy compositions, escort patterns, and environmental conditions, enabling them to tailor their attacks for maximum effect. The synchronization of Wolfpack movements ensured that individual submarines complemented each other's actions, creating overlapping zones of threat that complicated enemy defensive responses. The effectiveness of the tactic was further enhanced by the Royal Navy's emphasis on rapid communication and adaptability during engagements. Submarine groups maintained secure communication channels to coordinate attack timing and adjust to dynamic combat scenarios. This flexibility allowed Wolfpacks to exploit fleeting vulnerabilities within convoy defenses, striking decisively before withdrawing to evade counterattacks. The operational history of these engagements also reveals the human dimension underpinning the tactic's success. Commanders such as Captain Edward Wilkins and Lieutenant Commander James Harwood exemplified the blend of tactical acumen, disciplined execution, and leadership required to coordinate complex underwater operations. Their ability to interpret intelligence, manage crew readiness, and respond to unfolding combat conditions was critical in translating strategic concepts into battlefield victories. Moreover, the cumulative experience gained through these engagements informed continuous refinement of the tactic. After-action analyses identified strengths and weaknesses, prompting adjustments in formation strategies, communication protocols, and attack sequencing. This iterative process ensured that British submarine operations remained adaptive to evolving enemy countermeasures and technological developments. The impact of these coordinated submarine attacks extended beyond immediate maritime losses. Axis navies were compelled to reassess convoy routing, increase escort allocations, and enhance anti-submarine warfare capabilities. The diversion of resources to counter British submarine threats strained Axis naval operations and contributed to broader strategic challenges. This shift in enemy posture exemplifies how tactical innovation can generate disproportionate effects on the adversary's overall war effort. While the Wolfpack tactic imposed significant costs on Axis shipping, it also exacted sacrifices from the Royal Navy's submarine service. The risks inherent in coordinated group operations, such as increased chances of detection during communication exchanges and the hazards of operating in proximity, resulted in losses that underscored the perilous nature of undersea warfare. Nonetheless, the strategic gains achieved validated the approach and motivated ongoing commitment to its refinement. The operational history of the British submarine tactic during World War II is thus marked by a series of engagements that combine tactical ingenuity, intelligence exploitation, and technological integration. These actions disrupted Axis maritime logistics at critical junctures, supported Allied campaigns across multiple fronts, and reasserted British naval power beneath the sea. The legacy of these engagements endures as a testament to the transformative impact of coordinated submarine warfare. In assessing the broader significance of these operations, it becomes clear that the British submarine tactic did more than inflict material damage, it altered the strategic calculus of naval warfare. By introducing persistent, coordinated undersea threats, the Royal Navy forced Axis commanders to operate under constant maritime pressure. This environment constrained enemy operational freedom, reduced the efficiency of supply chains, and contributed to the eventual Allied victory. The successful execution of this tactic also influenced post-war naval doctrines, highlighting the value of intelligence-driven, coordinated operations and the integration of technological advancements. The lessons drawn from these engagements informed the evolution of submarine warfare strategies in the Cold War era and beyond, embedding principles of collaboration and precision that remain relevant. Ultimately, the operational history of British submarine engagements during this period encapsulates a narrative of innovation meeting necessity. Through coordinated Wolfpack tactics, supported by intelligence and technology, the Royal Navy transformed undersea warfare from isolated encounters into orchestrated campaigns of attrition. This evolution not only shaped the outcome of World War II naval battles but also redefined the strategic role of submarines in modern maritime conflict. In the aftermath of World War II, the British submarine tactic that had so profoundly reshaped undersea warfare did not fade into obsolescence but instead exerted a lasting influence on naval doctrines during the Cold War era. The strategic innovations of coordinated Wolfpack operations, intelligence-driven deployments, and stealth approaches were adapted to confront the evolving maritime threats posed by nuclear-powered submarines, missile technology, and sophisticated detection systems. The Royal Navy's post-war naval strategy integrated these lessons, ensuring the continued relevance and refinement of the tactic in a rapidly changing technological and geopolitical landscape. The transition from conventional diesel-electric submarines to nuclear-powered vessels marked a seismic shift in naval capabilities. Nuclear propulsion afforded submarines unprecedented endurance and speed, enabling them to operate undetected for extended periods across vast oceanic expanses. This development necessitated a re-evaluation of traditional submarine tactics, including those pioneered by the Royal Navy during the war. The principles of coordinated attacks and stealth remained foundational, but their application required adaptation to the new operational realities of nuclear submarines capable of global reach and rapid maneuvering. In response, the Royal Navy invested in advanced communication and command systems to facilitate coordination among nuclear submarines operating over greater distances and in more complex tactical environments. The emphasis on intelligence integration persisted, with signals intelligence and electronic surveillance becoming central to submarine deployment decisions. The lessons of Bletchley Park's code-breaking efforts were extended into the realm of electronic warfare, where decrypting and interpreting adversary communications remained critical to maintaining strategic advantage beneath the waves. Training programs evolved to prepare submarine crews for the demands of nuclear-powered operations and the sophistication of modern undersea combat. The culture of disciplined coordination established during World War II was reinforced and expanded, emphasizing joint operations, rapid information sharing, and flexible tactical responses. The Royal Navy recognized that technological superiority alone was insufficient. Effective doctrine and crew proficiency were indispensable in harnessing the capabilities of nuclear submarines within coordinated tactical frameworks. The development of missile technology further transformed submarine roles. The introduction of submarine-launched ballistic missiles, SLBMs, and cruise missiles expanded the strategic utility of submarines beyond traditional anti-shipping and interdiction missions. This shift necessitated doctrinal adjustments, integrating deterrence and strike capabilities into submarine operations. Nevertheless, the core tenets of stealth, coordination, and intelligence-driven deployment remained relevant, underpinning the Royal Navy's approach to undersea warfare in the nuclear age. Post-war adaptations of the British submarine tactic also addressed the increasing sophistication of anti-submarine warfare, ASW, technologies employed by potential adversaries. Advances in sonar, airborne surveillance, and underwater detection systems posed new challenges to submarine stealth and survivability. In response, the Royal Navy pursued innovations in acoustic quieting, hull design, and electronic countermeasures, building upon the wartime emphasis on minimizing detection risk. These technical developments complemented the tactical doctrine of coordinated operations, enabling submarines to operate effectively within contested environments. The organizational structures that had supported coordinated submarine tactics during the war were likewise transformed to meet Cold War demands. The Royal Navy established specialized command centers and integrated submarine operations into broader naval and joint force frameworks. This institutional evolution facilitated the planning and execution of complex missions involving multiple submarines and supporting assets, reflecting the increased scale and complexity of undersea warfare. International collaboration became a defining feature of post-war submarine doctrine, with the British tactic influencing Allied naval forces, particularly within NATO. The principles of coordinated wolfpack operations and intelligence-driven deployment were incorporated into multinational exercises and operational planning. This interoperability strengthened the collective undersea defense posture against the Soviet submarine threat, underscoring the enduring strategic value of the British innovation. The post-war period also saw the codification of the British submarine tactic within naval doctrine and training curricula. Manuals and operational guidelines distilled lessons learned from wartime experiences and subsequent adaptations, providing a doctrinal foundation for future generations of submariners. This institutional memory preserved the tactical innovation as a living legacy, ensuring its principles continue to inform undersea warfare strategies. Despite these advancements, the Royal Navy remained mindful of the inherent risks in coordinated submarine operations. The potential for detection, communication compromise, and operational mishaps persisted, particularly as the technological and geopolitical environment grew more complex. Continuous refinement of tactics, technology, and training was necessary to mitigate these risks and maintain strategic advantage. The influence of the British submarine tactic extended beyond the Royal Navy, shaping global naval thought during the Cold War. Other navies studied and adapted elements of the coordinated wolfpack approach, integrating intelligence and stealth into their undersea strategies. This diffusion of tactical concepts contributed to a dynamic undersea competition marked by innovation and counter-innovation. In retrospect, the post-war adaptation of the British submarine tactic illustrates the interplay between technological progress, strategic necessity, and doctrinal evolution. The Royal Navy's ability to translate wartime innovations into effective Cold War strategies exemplifies a continuity of purpose and adaptability. The foundational principles of coordination, intelligence integration, and stealth persisted as guiding tenets, even as the platforms and threats evolved dramatically. This continuity ensured that the Royal Navy submarine force remained a potent instrument of national security and strategic deterrence throughout the Cold War. The legacy of the wartime tactical breakthrough was thus not confined to historical achievement but lived on in the doctrines, technologies, and operational practices that shaped modern undersea warfare. The post-war period reaffirmed that tactical innovation is not a static accomplishment but an ongoing process requiring vigilance, flexibility, and commitment. The British submarine tactics evolution in response to nuclear propulsion, missile technology, and advanced ASW capabilities underscores the dynamic nature of military strategy. By embracing these challenges, the Royal Navy sustained and enhanced the strategic innovation that had transformed naval warfare decades earlier, securing its place at the forefront of undersea combat into the modern era. The strategic innovation embodied by the British submarine tactic left a profound and enduring legacy that transcended national boundaries and shaped the course of modern undersea warfare. Its principles, rooted in coordinated attacks, intelligence-driven deployment, and a stealth approach, became foundational to NATO submarine operations and influenced Allied and adversary navies alike. The tactical breakthrough of the mid-20th century thus resonates within contemporary doctrines, illustrating how a single innovation can reshape naval combat across generations and geopolitical divides. In the post-World War II environment, as the Cold War crystallized into a global contest between NATO and the Warsaw Pact, the lessons of British submarine operations were integral to alliance strategies. NATO navies adopted coordinated wolfpack tactics as a core component of their undersea warfare doctrine, recognizing the effectiveness of synchronized group maneuvers in imposing pressure on potential adversary supply lines and naval assets. This collective approach enhanced the alliance's ability to project power beneath the waves, countering the growing Soviet submarine threat with a blend of stealth, coordination, and intelligence exploitation. The integration of British tactical principles into NATO operations involved extensive multinational training exercises that emphasized interoperability and communication among diverse submarine fleets. These exercises simulated complex underwater engagements, testing coordination in detection, attack, and evasion. The emphasis on joint action reflected an understanding that undersea dominance in the nuclear age required collective capability rather than isolated national efforts. The British innovation thus became a linchpin in the alliance's strategic posture, reinforcing deterrence and defense across the Atlantic and Mediterranean theaters. Beyond NATO, the principles of the British submarine tactic influenced the development of submarine doctrines in other allied navies, including those of Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. These navies incorporated coordinated attack strategies and intelligence-driven deployments into their training and operational planning, adapting the British framework to regional maritime environments. The dissemination of these concepts contributed to a broader evolution of submarine warfare that emphasized collaboration, precision, and adaptability. Adversary navies, too, were compelled to respond to the tactical paradigm established by the British and their allies. The Soviet Navy, in particular, developed countermeasures and doctrines to mitigate the threat of coordinated wolfpack attacks. This included advancements in sonar technology, anti-submarine missile systems, and the deployment of their own submarine wolfpacks designed to challenge NATO dominance. The resulting undersea competition spurred a continuous cycle of technological and tactical innovation on both sides, underscoring the enduring strategic significance of the British breakthrough. Modern submarine tactics continue to reflect the legacy of the British innovation. While technological advancements, such as nuclear propulsion, advanced sonar arrays, and sophisticated missile systems, have transformed the capabilities and scale of undersea combat, the fundamental principles of coordination and intelligence integration remain central. Contemporary doctrines emphasize networked operations, real-time intelligence sharing, and multi-platform synchronization, echoing the wartime emphasis on collective action and stealth. The advent of digital communication and surveillance technologies has further enhanced the ability to execute coordinated submarine operations, enabling fleets to operate with unprecedented situational awareness and responsiveness. These capabilities build upon the foundations laid by British tactical innovation, demonstrating a continuity of strategic thought adapted to the modern battle space. The integration of unmanned underwater vehicles and artificial intelligence into submarine operations represents the latest evolution, extending the reach and complexity of coordinated undersea warfare. International naval cooperation continues to embody the principles of the British submarine tactic. Joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and integrated command structures within alliances such as NATO ensure that coordinated submarine operations remain a vital element of collective maritime security. This cooperation enhances deterrence, complicates adversary planning, and reinforces the strategic value of undersea dominance in contemporary geopolitical contexts. The enduring legacy of the British submarine tactic also informs naval procurement and research priorities. Investments in stealth technology, advanced sensors, and secure communication systems reflect an ongoing commitment to maintaining the tactical advantages pioneered during World War II. The recognition that control of the undersea domain is critical to broader maritime power underscores the relevance of these principles in shaping future naval capabilities. In reflecting on this legacy, it is evident that the British tactical breakthrough was not a transient wartime expedient but a transformative development with lasting strategic implications. It reshaped naval thinking, influenced international military collaboration, and established enduring norms for submarine warfare. The ripple effects of this innovation extend across decades and oceans, highlighting the profound impact of coordinated, intelligence-driven, and stealth-centric tactics on the evolution of naval combat. Ultimately, the British submarine tactic stands as a seminal chapter in the history of military innovation. It exemplifies how adaptation to emerging threats, integration of technological advancements, and the fusion of intelligence with operational art can redefine the nature of warfare. As modern navies confront new challenges in the undersea domain, the principles forged in this mid-20th century strategic innovation continue to guide doctrine, training, and technological development, ensuring that the legacy of the British breakthrough endures in the currents of contemporary naval conflict.